Am I live? Hello. Oh, I already have 3 people here. Heck yeah. And I have a goose down here. Um, if you don't know, my cat is named Goose. One of my cats is named Goose. Yeah. So, I know that it's not 7 yet, so I'm gonna wait until 7 maybe officially, because I know I said that I would be live at 7, so we're just gonna see. Oh, Goose Tail. Hello, boy. Goose. Do you want attention, boy? Hey, boy. Come on. Show the boy. Show the boy. Oh, there's the boy. Oh, there's the boy. Hi, Sharon and Ari. Goose says hello too, very reluctantly. Here's my boy. Pet the belly, pet the belly, pet the belly, pet the belly. Chunky. He's so big. Goose is such a big cat. Okay. He's a sweetheart. I love him. Although he and Ivy have been like all over my nerves. Cause like starting at around 5:30, this has been going on for the past 3 days. They've been waking me up every half hour starting at 5:30 in the morning. And I don't have to be at work until like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I live 10 minutes away. I don't need to be up like that. Aw, hi, William Shakespeare. My cats would say hi too if they liked other animals. Which is going to be problematic because we might be getting another cat sometime in the new year. Possibly, but that's a bit a ways away, hopefully. Yeah, but yeah, starting at 5:30 in the morning, they're like, hello, it's time for you to be awake. I'm not about that life. Like, I would theoretically really like to be someone who wakes up early, but like, he's getting near my knitting. But like, waking up early of my own volition, not because of my cat's choices. Ooh, my nail polish looks really good. It's something from ILNP, from like I Love Nail Polish, the brand. But like, look, ooh, it's shiny and iridescent. It's pretty. um, oh gosh, I'm looking at the Legata Gang Discord. The thumbnail that they show that the Couchbot chose for me. Fantastic. What a face I'm making. Just like yeah, knitting is really fun for cats, which is why I have to keep it locked in my office when I leave the house. Cause actually I'm not as far as I would like to be on one of my Christmas knitting projects, specifically due to Ivy. I'm knitting a pair of socks for my dad for Christmas, and I started it back in like May, and Ivy decided to take the ball of yarn that it was attached to and like run with it and like undo a bunch of the stitches. So I just put it away for a lot of months, and then I realized Christmas is Saturday, so I have to finish that. Hi, Feffy. How are you, friend? We're just chatting about knitting and cats. What else is new? Goose, please, hey buddy, I would really appreciate it if you like didn't try and get into my makeup. Like, I think that's a decision that you really shouldn't make. Thank you. Hey, Cecily. Oh, yay, people are coming. I'm excited. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to like chill, do some makeup. I've been thinking a lot about like beauty, community, and capitalism, but when the hell haven't I been thinking about that? So I might talk about that a little bit. We'll see. But I think it's Christmas time that's making me feel like extra burnt the fuck out on capitalism. Goose Wrap Supreme. What you doing, boy? That's one of his nicknames, Goose Wrap Supreme. I'm sorry you're having a stressful day, Feffy. Oh, so for the context of this live title, I've been thinking about capitalism. I ate chocolate earlier, because some bullshit happened this morning. So it's like fine now, but it was some bullshit at the time. So I'm getting ready to go to work. I leave my house. I see, ooh, there's mail in my mailbox. Ooh, there's one for me. Let me open it. It's a bill from the hospital from when I dislocated my elbow, and it was $3,600. Um, I call my dad because that's what I do when I experience things like this, and I cry, and then he tells me to call my insurance company, before we both cry. So I call my insurance company, and they said that I shouldn't have even gotten that bill and it should have been sent directly to them and they would cover it completely. So to just email them, which was great because I also tried to look on like the hospital to see if they would like let me do it in payments or something. They wouldn't even give me a payment plan. Like, and they're like, it's all due. Give us $3,600 by January 7th. And I was like, I don't even have $36, much less 3,600. So that the insurance company apologized because they don't understand how the bill went directly to me instead of them. So it was great that that got resolved, but holy shit, right? So I called my dad back and he was just like, well, that's good. Capitalism is so weird, Alex. Like that was about his words. So yeah, I that was my first car. We paid like 3,000 for it. So yeah, that was right. Let me go rob a bank real quick. I don't even make that much in a month. Like that's like twice my rent. Right. They literally said like, we appreciate you paying this promptly. This shit. But anyway, that's gotten me thinking about capitalism and how depressed capitalism makes me. So yeah, let me actually get to also the makeup part of this. I'm feeling some Beetlejuice recently deceased palette stuff because honestly, I know that this is their like last year's holiday palette. This is amazing and I still use it all the time. It's really great. Especially I was going to say especially the purples in it, but honestly the um greens in here are pretty fantastic. Ooh, what if I did like purples, but with this dark emeraldy green today. Yeah, I think that's gonna be today's endeavor. So let me prime my eyes and we can get to talking about capitalism in the beauty community because I've also come to a lot of realizations about that this year. Yeah, I still have the box from the Beetlejuice collection. I still have everything from this. So I'm really, really, really excited about it. Um, but let's talk about capitalism in general in the beauty community because I've come to some realizations this year. So, as some of you may know, if you're in the Discord with me, I finally, after like 6 months of basically not buying any makeup for myself, just kind of like out of necessity because my job like covers rent and that's it, kind of right now. Although I'm getting more hours to get company sponsored health insurance and like more money next year. So I'm almost in the clear for like being good. Um, but yeah, brushes. I hadn't bought makeup in like 6 months. So yeah. Ooh, if I could squish one capitalist like a bug, who would it be? Um, I can't say who I can't. Either Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. I don't know. That's how I think them. Like, who would it? Yeah. But yeah. So one of those guys. I'm not 100% sure. I'd need to do a bit of math in order to determine who would like do the most good to squish, you know? Because I'm all about increasing the net good of this world. Um, yeah. But anyway, basically, I like the last 6 months, I've just been like paying rent with my current job and then like door dashing for the rest of my expenses because that's just kind of what my job covers. And I knew that going into this job, it pays really well for my like for the amount of hours that I work, and I get a lot of freelance work through there, which is nice, and I'm hoping to expand upon in the new year as well. So like I love my job and I can't wait to do more of it and let that, you know. But also in the fact that this I made a ColourPop purchase, which like I'm not the biggest ColourPop fan, but they had a really good $5 sale on some things that I had kind of been eyeing. And so I bought two things, and that plus shipping was like $16. And I like had to get over a lot of my own guilt, even for just like spending that amount of money on myself, because I'm like, I haven't had fun in so long. um, which is like probably really indicative of how my mental health has been, that I feel guilty about having fun while being broke. But I think I've kind of come to the realization that that sort of like guilt and not being able to spend all of the money like some other YouTubers do and stuff has been part of what like my lack of motivation has been on YouTube. Not in that I think that you need to have money in order to be a YouTuber, although I think that there are genuinely, you know, things out there. um, you know, like that, like there are genuinely things out there that do require you to have money in order to do for YouTube. So I think that that is part of it, but also just that the YouTube beauty culture is so just like inundated with capitalism, no matter how you shake it, that I think it's really depressing to want to do things in the beauty community when you can't like afford to do all of the things that you would want to in the beauty community, because you enjoy things like having a roof over your head and like having a cell phone, you know? Uh and like I fell off of watching a lot of beauty videos this year. If you look at my like YouTube subscriptions, it's I still have a lot of like my old favorites, but it's more people I just watch for like their personality, because I like them as a person, not because of like the genre of video that is. And while I think that there is like a good amount of like anti-consumerism in the beauty community, I think I don't know. I still feel like we have a long, long way to go in terms of capitalism and stuff. And I think anti-hauls are good. And is this part of me just complaining about like the fact that I've kind of had a shitty year? Yes. Yeah. um, but I think that that lack of motivation and the lack of being able to participate in the beauty community in the same way that other people do, I feel like that's definitely a thing. And I'm wondering, and like I've always been aware of it, um, but you know, yes, Goose, do you agree? Oh, you do? Capitalism is bullshit, right, Goose? He's scratching, so yes, he agrees. Hey, boy. Come up here. Come up here, buddy-o. Or are you just gonna sit there and stare at me? Okay. Yeah. So, how one of my goals in 2021, one, I do want to do more fun things for myself because I think after this year, I kind of do need to actually like let myself enjoy my life. I think I've spent this year doing a lot of like rebuilding my life and trying to figure out what I want, you know? But I also think so I do want to get to a point where like I get to enjoy shit. Yeah. 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 It's sorry, I'm just reading Feffy's comment about yeah. I would have had a less shitty year if capitalism weren't involved. And I think a lot of people would have had less shitty years if capitalism weren't involved. Um like what would our lives be like if we didn't have to constantly worry about like can I afford groceries? Can I make rent? You know? And I think that that's not going to go away anytime soon, unfortunately. So I wonder if part of like the shift in the beauty community in general, like what trends we're going to see in 2022. It's about to say 2021 because God, I can't believe we're. Goose, don't scratch my purse. That's really rude of you. I really, really wish you wouldn't do that. Or are you trying to make biscuits on my purse? Good thing it's on the side that I like keep to my body and not the side that gets shown to the world. Gooseykins. Goose Springsteen, can you chill out? But I wonder if part of that, since I know, like y'all are saying, like I know so many people who have been shifting away from beauty community content. I forgot that this shadow doesn't really work well if you just like put it in on a brush. So let me just. Wow, I'm not sure if I like this as much as I thought I would. Yes, Goose Springsteen is his musician name. We have a scratching post for him that looks like a guitar. But I wonder if part of, hey, what was that? I'll get to my point someday. I promise. But I wonder if part of that shift might be that people are moving towards just like generally spending less money and figuring out what beauty and creativity could look like if we didn't have to worry about money. Yeah, this isn't turning out like I want it to. I was gonna maybe like film a video afterwards, but this might not be. Ooh, yeah, I agree with that, Cecily. Goose, if you want to chat, you can come in here and join in the conversation. You don't have to go out into the hallway to scream. But yeah, I think a lot of like DIY content, kind of like what Lauren May Beauty does, of like the BYOPs, the duping the vibes and stuff. Because I think there is like a genuine barrier to people in the beauty community, you know. I think, yeah, and I think also like creating your own makeup might. I want to do that, but I'm so scared. Like I've watched the Franken makeup stuff that like Nisi Peace has done in the past, and I've always thought it was so cool. And I think I'm kind of hoping that that becomes more common because I think so many people are like, I know one of my things in the past have kind of said like, I've kind of felt like, well, if I can't tell people exactly what this is in a tutorial, then I don't want to do it. But I'm looking back on that and I think, I think it's kind of that same mentality, like when big beauty gurus will like declutter limited edition palettes because you can't get them anymore. Like this was last year's holiday collection. Yeah, you can't get it anymore, but I use the ever loving crap out of it. Same with this brush set. Elfin J. Kissa. I wish that they would bring this back. Yes, these are some of the best brushes I've ever owned in my life. You can't get them anymore, but I will never stop using them. And I think that, like, as YouTubers, as creators, we want to use things that are accessible to people. But at the same time, I wonder, part of it, like, I wonder, how many big beauty gurus are like in deep debt, because of like the pressure to just keep buying more and buying more and buying more. Or even like smaller to mid-sized people who might not get PR, but still feel the pressure to just keep, um, to keep up with the trends and stuff and all of that. So, right. I think, yeah, because I think there's that sentimental value too when it comes to limited edition stuff. Like, not only do I love this palette because of like the color story, but I also love Beetlejuice. And that would kind of keep me around for a while. Like that's something that adds to the reason why I'm going to keep this, you know. So, a lot of this is just me bitching about my own life, honestly, and I'm really sorry if that's not what you're here for. Um, but genuinely, I also, you know, I want to drag my own channel out of this capitalist hellscape, and I'm taking all of you with me. So, how do we do that, friends? I'm going to destroy my own makeup and make it into new things. That's part of it. But, how can we make the beauty community a joyful place where we don't like feel pressured to, buy all of the things all of the time? Use what you have, but also don't feel bad when you do actually want to, you know. Yeah, I think because there's also, I agree with you, Feffy, about I've watched like Hannah Louise Poston's videos about doing her no buy year because of like debt and shopping addiction and consumerism and all of that. And I think one thing that I really appreciated about that, I think there's like such a stigma around debt and how we're supposed to, have all of the new things and keep up with the times, but if you like actually enjoy it, or if you go into debt in order to do so, or you realize you have a problem with it, then that's when the problem comes in. That's when people start getting mad at you. Like, I don't want to compare different types of addiction or anything because I feel like that's not fair. But I will say that, like, I don't think, talking about debt is as, like, it, I don't want to say, like, it should be more common because I think that there should be a lot more debt relief. I'm just using the shade Flash from Jupiter Jungle, by the way, on my inner corner, just because I feel like it's easy and I don't want to add, like, any more colors into this look. Which, by the way, it looks really good in person. I feel like it looks awful on camera. Yeah. But I feel like talking about shopping and debt is really stigmatized. Like, I think most of us are in debt in one way or another. But we're not allowed to say anything about it because it's your own fault, really. Yeah. So, And that's something I struggle with too. I don't want to talk about like my expenses, my debts, my mistakes, whatever. Like that's I think it takes a lot of vulnerability and willingness to put yourself out there to talk about that because I think we need to be having those conversations more. But I also don't want to put the onus on people who struggle with that to put themselves out there. Um, because people can be absolutely trash on the internet. Yeah, personal responsibility. You know, if the government wanted to see the money that they loaned me to go to college back, they really shouldn't have given it to me in the first place. How else are they going to learn personal responsibility if I pay them back, how else will they learn personal responsibility? They should probably just stop going to Starbucks. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Like, I think we need to talk about it more, but I don't think we have the space to do that. Like, I would love to make that like an honest conversation, but do like with this mental health in this economy, am I really gonna want to look through those comment sections? No. No. Yeah. I'm glad that the election went well. Feffy. I maybe it's because I'm just like becoming more aware of the world, but I feel like elections and last year's election in the US and knowing more about elections around the world, why do I feel like they're getting just like tougher and tougher in so many different places? I think I don't know. That I think is a topic I could also get into. And actually I might I might want to make that into a like a live stream roundtable talking about like that might be a thing for the new year, but maybe just talking about like elections and voting around the world. I think with like how the presidential election went in 2020 in the US and from what I've heard from a lot of different countries, that I think that could be a fun conversation. But that's I think I might DM you about that to if that might be an interesting topic. Um but I'm glad that the vote wasn't as suppressed. Hello. Hello. I'm glad you're here. Um I think I feel like these eyes aren't like super even. Mm. Now it's also not even again. Cool, 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 cool. Yeah. I'm so glad so many people are here. I'm gonna tell y'all my last live stream when I had um people come on and just like people greeting me. I think it's because I had kind of really been away from the YouTube community for so long, but I kind of like cried a few happy tears after this stream that so many people were like excited to be there. I've just like we're already being like real vulnerable on this stream. Audra, hey. I'm already Goose says hi too. He's a chatty boy. But like between this stream and the last one, I feel like I've been in general with this year, I've been having a lot of trouble just like feeling like a human, you know? That like when I hear people like when I see people in the chat or like anytime I talk with a person who I haven't talked with in a while, I'm like, oh my God, I'm a human, and there are people who enjoy my presence, which I realize, like, statistically speaking, has to be true, but I like it's hard to like actually comprehend because Are we just I think I'm just gonna get all up in the feels in this live stream because a lot of shit is just pouring out, and I hope y'all like that. Um, but it's also because like, I am a pretty sensitive person who's just like, um, "Goose, come in and join me, talk about your feelings too." He keeps going out into the the hallway to scream and then gets upset when he realizes that I'm in the other room. Buddy, you're a year and a half old. Have you developed object permanence yet? Come on, boy. Yeah, there's a goose. Uh, but like, I'm a sensitive person who has spent the last few years just like straight up repressing my feelings. And so I know that I come off to a lot of people as like a really not feeling person. Um, so I'm like trying to remedy that in a healthy way. Like learn to feel my feelings and express them. And part of that is like realizing that I love a lot of people and a lot of people love me, and holy shit, that's hard, man. Goose, stop. He's making biscuits on my purse and ruining it again. He does this so often. I know it's out of love. But like, come on, dude. You're better than that. um, but yeah, maybe other people can relate, but I've spent part of my journey this year has been like actually trying to figure out how I express my feelings because all growing up, I was like labeled as too sensitive. So, like, in my early 20s, I spent all of that time trying to shove it back down. And then you get this, which is someone who has a lot of feelings, just doesn't know how to express them. I also think I might be more of an extrovert than I originally anticipated. Like, I'm a socially anxious social person. Yeah. And I'll credit a lot of my self-reflection to like Case because like I shove a lot in, and I think that um I'm really good at compartmentalizing, which can be good at times, like in times of crisis when you need to get shit done before you feel the feels. Um, but at the same time, I think I've spent too much time doing that, and I'm like a recovering sensitive insensitive person. Like, yeah. Yeah, like part of it is the only way to get through the day was to pretend to be a tough ass, but also that like like when you care too much about people that you don't want to burden them with how much you care. It's a lot of it was that for me. Like I feel I'm still working through like a lot of guilt about having emotions. Um is this all coming out because I've been self-therapizing instead of seeing a therapist for the last year and a half? Possibly. Um, and there and as you will notice, that is also something I'm working through. I make a lot of jokes about my emotions because I don't know how to do, like, the actual expressing of emotions, so I just become the manic pixie dream queer, um, so that way I can be the quirky fun friend and not burden anyone with anything. Um which is not healthy. Like, I think where did I put I had my little face palette here somewhere. It went to a place. Did it go under my pile of clothes here? Possibly. I found a box of tea. Yeah. Yeah, my last therapist was actually through my grad school, and she was like the best therapist I've ever had. Love her, and I think we made a lot of progress. I've been like trying to therapist shop. That's Ivy back there, by the way. A rare appearance from her on a live stream. Um, but she was fantastic. She was really great about just like hearing me and like trying to like actually let me feel my feelings, because I felt like therapy was kind of like the only appropriate place for me to feel things, you know. Ivykins, do you want to come say hi? I'm gonna do a thing that'll make her mad real quick. Ivy. She does not like being held like her brother, but I just, yep, there she goes. I just, do you forgive me? Okay, she booped me. We're good. Um, yeah. I think sensitivity can be a strength too, because I think most of us who are called too sensitive just like notice bad things in the world happening and think that we should like stop it instead of letting it continue to happen. Shocker, I know. uh so I think that's like part of it. Like I think half the reason sensitivity is so stigmatized is just so sensitive folks point out uncomfortable truths and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Like, it's important to say when bad things are happening. I genuinely don't know where I put my face palette. Hold on. Did I? Yep, I shoved that in there too. Shove that down underneath my other palettes like I've been doing with my motions for the last few years. Um, yeah. This is the most vulnerable I've ever been on the internet. I read a lot of, I did a lot of Brene Brown in seminary. And I think I have a lot of thoughts on Brene Brown because I like her work. I like her work a lot on an individual context. I do not like how it is being used in like academia and the workplace, because like when I was in seminary, we used a lot of her work in our classes, which like for spiritual formation class, which I think I kind of joke that it was like group therapy for credit, because it kind of was, but I also don't like how that was used and how it continues to be used, because I think vulnerability is really important and I think that can help our relationships so much, but I don't like how it's been capitalismed. You know, like students should not feel forced to be vulnerable in a classroom in order to, I wouldn't say like get a good grade, but like, you know, in classes where it's like, I took a lot of classes that were like participation focused, you know, and when there is like, oh my god, I have cat hair all over this black shirt. But I've noticed that in like school and the workplace and stuff, it's been used a lot to like basically make people share things that like I wouldn't want my coworkers to know about. I wouldn't want my classmates to know about. Yeah, and they're trying to monetize vulnerability to do like, you know, fun and funky weekend work events and stuff like that. And I know Brene Brown probably doesn't like it. I haven't explored her work, her more recent work, but like in the last 4 years ago or so, I'd say I've did, yeah, it was like 2017, 2018 that I read a lot of her stuff for school. So I think that there's like a line, because I think her work can be so useful in just like existing as a human, because I think we need to get rid of a lot of the stigma around, you know, just being able to have honest conversations. But I also feel like it can very easily be weaponized in like academia. And I try to push back on that a little bit in my classes and stuff. Like if we have students who are already in like vulnerable populations, why do we need to make this another space where they have to be vulnerable? Yes, it was in my Masters of Divinity program, which I also think that MDiv programs are really difficult to like navigate in that way of like there are a lot of blurred lines between like the personal and professional in the like church spirituality career world, because I think you are supposed to take a lot of your own personal experience into it, which is, that's how I ended up where I am. That's why I do the work that I do. A lot of it is based on personal experience. Um, but I think that, like, I noticed that there were also like, some lines that I think were a little bit unhealthy, like forced vulnerability, I would say, in an academic setting. Yeah. So, and I'm not here to say like I didn't have a bad experience or anything, and I'm not necessarily sure what I would do differently like if I were teaching a class like that, but I think it's definitely something that a lot of people don't realize when they are in the midst of it. Because I think half of the people who go to seminary usually do so because they're already having like a faith crisis or like an identity crisis, which I'm including myself in a lot. Um, and so that sort of context makes it very easy to just like bring all of that into the work that you're there to do. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying that that is a thing that can make things harder than you anticipate it being. Yeah. Naropa. I do not know what that is. I'm gonna. Okay. Ooh. Oh, that actually looks really interesting. Um, I just had to do a Google because I don't know many things. Um, but yeah. Okay, so it's a non-sectarian university that was founded by a Buddhist teacher. And I find that I would love to know like the experience of people who went to like non-Christian seminaries. Like my third year of seminary, I worked with I was I'll I don't work there anymore, so I'm gonna just say it, but I worked as an intern for Interfaith Philadelphia. And so part of it was like getting to know folks from different seminaries, a lot of whom weren't Christian. And half of it was kind of cut short because of COVID. We didn't get to do a whole lot because my last semester of seminary was in 2020. So we didn't get to do nearly as much as we had wanted to. So but I did genuinely find it really interesting what folks were doing at other seminaries. And I wonder, like, my seminary is predominantly Methodist, but it's Methodist sponsored, broadly Protestant, with occasional, like, a couple of Catholic students, a couple of UU students, so largely Protestant, which I think, influenced a lot of the culture there. So I wonder, you know, if a different like religious context would influence kind of like the way we do seminary and what lines and boundaries there are. Um, yeah, that's just a thing I would like to know more. Yeah, we had actually a lot of my friends from seminary are Unitarian Universalists. Um, they were super the UUs and the UCC students were the best around the time that the Methodist Church was going to hell in 2019. I mean, it still kind of is going to hell, but you know, I'm working at gay-friendly Methodist church at the moment, so I have diplomatic immunity, which is really nice. I feel like I don't have to worry about that as much as I did when I was in seminary, like, I'm safe now. Um, yeah, let me see what lipstick I think I'm just gonna put on a lip gloss, because lipstick feels like a lot of work. Um, yeah, religious organizations involvement in capitalism. I have so many thoughts about that. Um, because I think that on one hand, like, to a certain context, everything that we do in the context that we live in is inherently political, um, and influenced by our capitalist society and just like the general culture that we come from. So it's kind of saying that in that I come from my hometown is like right near Liberty University. So I saw a lot of like religious involvement in politics and capitalism and the way that influenced like businesses in the area, um, especially with the religious right and the, things like people defending bakers who wouldn't bake wedding cakes for gay couples, things like that. Like there were a lot of Chick-fil-A's um near where I grew up, like stuff like that. Um so I think I have a complicated opinion in that I think the best effort is to divest from capitalism completely as a religious institution. However, I also feel like if the religious right can use politics and capitalism to further marginalize people, then why the hell aren't those of us on the other side, um, able to use those same tactics to fight for justice and equality? And I think that's a complicated um that's something that I kind of go between, because if you look at what Jesus did in the Bible, like Jesus was not a capitalist. You know, if you ask WWJD, what would Jesus do? The answer might be like chase people or flip over tables and chase people with a whip to make sure that they're not ripping people off, and disrespecting the church by putting a dollar sign on it. So I think we have to make an active choice to divest from capitalism as a whole. Um, I think that churches should be taxed, all of like religious institutions should be taxed. I think that it'll definitely take some time to make that happen, because I feel like that would have an unfair impact on smaller churches that might not be used to that. So I think that there would be like smaller organizations in general. Like the church I work at right now is huge and probably wouldn't feel the impact too much. But I also don't want it to, um, a measure like that to inappropriately like get at people who are already, struggling. So like rural religious organizations that are in the minority in their community, so might not have a whole lot of people funding it anyway. And I'm not just talking about Christian churches, I'm talking about a lot of, religious communities that might be in the minority and so don't have as much um, financial involvement as some of the larger churches that usually end up being a bit more on the right wing anyway. So, um, that's a basic feeling. I think largely that I recently read this like on a sticker on Facebook, but it said, "Stop trying to sit at the tables that Jesus flipped," and I think that's kind of how I feel about religious involvement in capitalism. Um, Church for All Souls. Um, yeah, for okay. I have actually been to a Catholic church like only once in my life, maybe twice. One time that I remember it was part of the interfaith Philadelphia stuff. I went to a Catholic seminary. for their mass, which was actually that was one of the most interesting experiences. Oh, yeah. Uh, that's that's something I have complex feelings on as well, because I think honestly that religious institutions, at least if we're doing it right, so I'm just going to talk about my church experience. I'm not necessarily advising it for all places, but um I think if we are going to have, deep and meaningful community within our churches, then we need to like get comfortable with the idea of having difficult political conversations there, because I think that the church, since we have played a role too long in, upholding white supremacy, upholding sexism, upholding homophobia, we should be taking an active role in dismantling all of those things as well. So I think it is important to talk about like elections and things like that in church context. Like when I was at the church I was at during seminary, our Sunday school class did spend some time like talking about, the Democratic primaries, whose values seem closest to ours and things like that. I think we do cross a line when we actually tell people who to vote for. And I'm saying that as someone who made a video um getting on, I don't even remember her, Amanda Ensing, about like her Trumpiness and her being a Christian and all of that. Um so yeah. Like I think one, you can tell people like, hey, that's a white supremacist, and I'm really questioning how that person actually aligns with your values as a Christian, as a person of faith, whatever. Actually, I don't like the term person of faith too much, because I think people use that as shorthand for Christian a little too much, when there's a lot of faiths out there. But yeah, I think we can't necessarily tell people who to vote for in our religious institutions, but I think it's also important to like hold each other accountable, and that like, hey, I know that like in the sense of, I know you to be this sort of person who cares about other people. Why are you voting for someone who clearly does not? And not necessarily make it a party line thing, because let's be honest, have we noticed how people of all different political parties really don't actually seem to give that much of a shit about us, about people? Um, yeah. I'm I'm glad that you threw away all of the pamphlets advising people how to vote, because we don't need to be advising people how to vote. We need to be, I think it's part of like, I'm thinking back to a history class that I took when I was in high school, and it was also my dad's philosophy about me in general. Um, like when I was growing up, because my dad and I have slightly different political beliefs, like more economically than human rightsy, you know what I mean? Of like, he's more like less government involvement, and I'm more like, I think we need the government a bit more involved than it is. Um, so it's always been like that. But I remember my AP US history teacher told us, because we were cramped for time that semester anyway, and we weren't able to put in everything that we wanted for the AP test. And he did tell us, he's like, hey, I know that we're not going to get in all the information that you need for the AP test this year due to how the school scheduled us. Um, but I care, so I don't care how well you do on the AP test, but I do care that you come out of the classroom um, knowing how to form opinions about things and actually have critical thinking skills. And my dad was very similar. He told me when I went off to college, he was like, I don't care what college you end up in. I don't care what you label yourself as. I care more that you have put thought and logic and compassion into your opinions and your beliefs, and that they are something that you can confidently say without parroting other people's opinions. That it's an opinion you form for yourself based on your own values. And I think that's sort of the conversation that we need to be having about religious education in churches, um, because that's something I've always felt, even just growing up Methodist. So in the Methodist church, yes, we do infant. Let's talk about baptism and confirmation, because I'm just gonna rant about this. Um, but like, so the Methodist church believes in infant baptism, which was something I didn't really agree with until I got to seminary and I got to hear about other people's opinions of it. Because I think a lot of places do see infant baptism as saying, okay, you are going to be a member of our church for the rest of your life. Um, but now the way I've kind of seen it is because we also do confirmation, usually around like the time you're about like 13, 14. I did mine when I was 16 simply because my church was so small that I had to wait for a couple of other kids to get to a good enough age to do confirmation. That way we could all do a confirmation class together. Um, but confirmation is basically where you learn about like everything you need to know about Methodism, the history, the beliefs, the book of discipline, all that you need to know so you can make an informed decision about whether or not you actually want to be a part of it. And that's kind of how I view just like life. And I want the church to use our like religious education to put that in place in a lot of other ways, because that shouldn't just be how you form your own faith beliefs. It should be how you form all of your beliefs. So the initial baptism is us saying like, hey, you're part of the family, we're going to take care of you. um, and when you get older, then you can make the decision on your own. But for now, we're going to help you. We're going to take care of you. You're a part of our community. Not necessarily that, like, as a kid, you have to, believe all of the right things, but more as we'll take care of you and we'll, you know, help raise you, sort of like, it's not just your parents that are going to raise you, it's the whole church. It's all of us in it together with you. And then when you're old enough, you can figure out for yourself if this is something that you want to be a part of, um, and kind of treat it as a continuing process that we're always growing throughout our lives. Oh gosh. This is what happens when I talk too much. That's really interesting. I do know that confirmation is, a place where people don't. I When I did confirmation with the youth group I was working with, I really did try and help make sure that the kids understood, like, I'm not going to be mad at you if you don't continue on in Methodism. I do have water handy, actually, a little bit left. Um, like, because that's not something I necessarily experienced with my own confirmation. Um, Not from like the pastor or my parents necessarily, but um I jokingly call myself like Baptist Methodist. How I grew up, like it was a Methodist church in a Southern Baptist community, you know. Hey Marie. um we're talking about churchy stuff is always what I land on. um but I felt very much like, okay, you have to believe this. So unfortunately, like, when it came down to it, like, genuinely, I do feel like the Methodist Church, generally speaking, aligns really well with what I believe as a person anyway. You know, talking about grace and, basically the whole God loves you, now go do something about it kind of thing that we have going on. Well, welcome, Marie. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. We're talking about deep stuff because I'm done with my makeup and then we started talking about religion and stuff. So I but I was very lucky in that, like, kind of what I was taught was eventually what I landed on. Like, I can't really see myself doing anything else, like, I feel like I'm, at the church that I'm supposed to be in, a part of the denomination that I'm supposed to be in. But I think, we shouldn't pressure, people who, when they go through confirmation, if they don't land to where we anticipate them going. Like, I did have a couple of kids who didn't want to continue on, and I was like, okay, you can keep joining us for church, for youth group, Sunday school, whatever you want to do, but um, I'm also not going to force you into membership or anything like that, because I feel like that's like, what did I just drop? I just dropped my phone. Who cares? Um, yeah, I think. Ugh. Well, thank you for that. I will say I have an office at the job that I'm at now, and everyone who's come into my office said that it looks like a therapist's office the way it was set up. Um, Thank you. This is really nice. You know what? Church music, though, that does, I feel like that impacts it so much. Like, I was deep in church music when I was a kid. And I still am. Honestly, if it weren't for the fact that part of my job is like running tech on Sundays, I would be more involved in the choir where I'm working. Like, I still try and come to rehearsal and sing sometimes. But yeah, I think I think church music is, I don't know. I think music and arts in general are like such a big part of a lot of people's religious experiences, you know. Okay, that's really interesting. I find it really interesting hearing from people who didn't necessarily start going to church from birth too. Oh, are you back, Goose? Do you have more thoughts? Do you care to share them with the class? Oh, now you're quiet. Okay. Make me look weird. Uh, I I love church music a lot. Um, yeah, buddy, please don't play with the electric string. I really don't think that's a good life choice there. Yes, stick your face in my shoe. And then get mad when it smells like feet. That's a cat thing where they like sniff something and then they make the faces like it smells bad. You know what? Make a joyful noise. Like, who really cares if you're good at singing in church? Yeah. I I understand that. I had a friend in high school who didn't grow up in church, and she was pagan as well, and she said that she never wanted to set foot in a church. And it kind of took me a bit at the time because I was like 14 and I didn't understand. I didn't quite have that empathy developed yet, in that I grew up in an extremely Christian area. And honestly, it took me until I was around 8 years old that I even learned that, like, oh my gosh, there are people who don't go to church every Sunday, because it was just so normal for me, you know? Um, so I I grew up very, very, very insulated until I really got to college, honestly. Um, yeah. I thought that I was like really rebellious in the church too when I was a kid. Um, because I wore eyeliner and I listened to Green Day, even though I went to church every Sunday and youth group, and I did the district youth group too. And I was an honor student. who was scared of breaking any rules, but I was a rebel for Jesus. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see what other weird aspects of my, like, religious experience growing up. Oh, I was an acolyte too. I was my church's only acolyte. And it was a pain in the ass too because it was a small church and no one wanted to turn the fans off. So half the time when I was bringing the light up the aisle, the fans would flicker it away. And I would have to have my dad grab a lighter from the back and like relight my thing about halfway up. Good times, dude. Yeah. Church is freaking weird, dude. I'm so glad I'm where I'm at. Like my church is really chill. Like it's weirdly high church. I grew up, like I said, Baptist Methodist, so like people shouting and saying amen in church and all of that. And like that's just what I'm used to. And now my church is a little bit more buttoned up. We have like a big old organ and like the music is a lot more classical. It's almost like Episcopal service, at least in comparison to what I'm used to. So now like half the time I don't know the hymns because we had a rotation of about 10 to 20 hymns, it felt like when I was growing up, because no one wanted to learn anything new. So now half the time I'm like, oh, I didn't know that one, didn't know that one. Oh, that was some lyrics that I hadn't heard before. One thing I learned while I was in seminary is that apparently Oh Holy Night, fun history lesson for you all. Oh Holy Night was originally written as an abolitionist hymn, and the third verse in there is not commonly sung in a lot of different places. So, let me let's see. Basically, part of the third verse of "O Holy Night" was um well, it's truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. And that was not a verse that I grew up with. I didn't really learn about that until college. And I recently shared about that on Facebook to some of my Facebook friends. And I had a lot of friends who are like from like more northern progressive religious communities who had said, "Oh yeah, I've always known that verse. Did you not always have that verse?" But that was originally written as a poem by a French atheist socialist as an abolitionist hymn, because even though he was personally a secular person, also need to note that he was disabled as well. I want to include all of the proper context because even though he was secular, he knew that at the time, because it was around 1847, I think it was, he wrote that because he wrote it as a hymn because he knew that if it got into churches, it would have a wider audience. But that's the thing that I learned church musically recently, because like I knew that there was a third verse that I didn't grow up singing that I learned about later in life. So that's just me kind of being nerdy about that, but I thought y'all might be interested in learning it too. Let me catch up on the comments because I was a little church music history fangirling that I had. I love your mom's gang, Sharon. Can I join? Because that's about where I fall in the religious world. Okay, have a good night, Cecily. Happy solstice. Oh my gosh. To all who are celebrating. I did not like officially celebrate, but I am happy that our days are getting longer again because the seasonal depression is hitting me so hard. Yeah. I think I'm always interested in badasses in religious communities. But yeah, that was something I learned recently, and I kinda did an informal poll of, like, the different demographics of folks who grew up with it versus folks who learned it later in life. Um, and since it was an abolitionist hymn, I wasn't surprised to learn that, like, most of the people who had said that they grew up with it were largely from, like, areas that, were always abolitionist, in either, like, northern states or, states that were always free states in their founding, and then uh, also like predominantly black churches. That was largely the demographic of people who had grown up with it versus people who had like, oh yeah, I'd always heard of that. Um, so I find that really cool. That was a really cool bit of like hymn history. And I never, honestly, I never listened to Oh Holy Night that much growing up, largely because I think it's more of a soprano friendly hymn. And I feel like I can't, I love to sing. I think I'm pretty good at singing, but I cannot hit some of the notes that make it sound really good. um, it's not, it's not a song made for altos, in my opinion. Yeah. Oh, do you want to trade, Feffy? Like the weather isn't that bad here, um, but I'm truly not made for winter whatsoever. Like this body was not made for cold weather. Like I know I knit and I know like it could be worse because I am also heat sensitive. Like I'm literally I have a sun allergy because God thought it was really funny to be like, "Oh, you're allergic to the sun, bitch." But yeah, I that's one thing I love about the United Methodist hymnal is that they always have all of the different parts of harmonies written in there. So that way they're pretty easy to read and understand. Yeah. Sounds good. I'll take away some of your degrees, so it'll be it'll be a bit better. Um hmm, interesting. I didn't I haven't had the experience of like being too warm in clothes yet. Like I've had the experience of the sun being like physically too hot and my skin getting itchy and me feeling kind of baked potatoey. But like I'm freezing all the time. I did get a new winter coat recently and I'm very happy about it. I love it a lot. Um, but I have not yet ever felt like, oh, that's too warm. um, yeah. Do you just want to? I'm just thinking, like, do we want to have like a little hymn sing along thing? I don't know. I don't know. Case always gets too hot and I get too cold. We try and compromise and keep the thermostat around 69 degrees, but Case is home visiting family, and I have it turned up to like 72 right now, and I'm still like a little chilly. But I also don't want to turn it up anymore because I feel like even though I'm here just like by myself, I feel like it would be a bit more excessive to do that. Um, yeah. Yeah. That's fair. We can trade. I'll take your summer, honestly. I also feel like I dress better in the summer. I feel like summer to fall clothes look really good on me, but as soon as like winter comes around and all of the layers, I don't feel like that's the best look for me. I like having my arms out, as you can tell by the fact that this is like a turtleneck, but I have my arms out. I don't feel like I was made for sleeves. I can't I can't do 62 degrees inside. I'm like, bundle up if I were to do that. No, thank you. Mm. I also just had dinner, so I'm having like acid reflux, which is really fun. And I love that for me. I forgot to get Tums when I went to the store today. This is a face of regret. Um, let's see. Yeah, my makeup's. I forgot to share what lip gloss I'm wearing. It's Mood Ring by Fluide, who I love. I love them so much. Oh, you haven't seen my arm tattoo? This is my arm tattoo. So, if we want to talk about religion a little bit, this is a religious-ish tattoo. So, knitting needles, because I knit, have been since I was 9, and these are actually supposed to represent the first knitting needles I ever got from my Nana, which was a pair of purple ones. When I was 9. And then up here, you can actually see that this was a cover up of a cross that I got done when I was 18. When I had a lot of hope for the Methodist Church and not a lot of money, but I wanted a tattoo. So I wanted to get a cross, and then I promised myself that when the Methodist Church started liking the gays, and I would get a rainbow flame to go with it to make it the Methodist logo. It was really not well done. You could see how patchy it became after it healed. You could tell that I paid $80 for it and not much more. And ever since then, I have been a lot more selective in like saving up money for tattoos. So I decided to get it covered up around the holiday 2019. And I got a ball of yarn and some sunflowers over it. Sunflowers because I like sunflowers. Just thought that would be nice. And the yarn to kind of go with the needles, which you will see. My artist helped me keep the symbolism and still make the yarn rainbow at the end. I need to get this part kind of touched up and fixed because I had intended on getting it touched up and fixed when I was back home in Virginia over spring break 2020, which was in March of 2020. So we all understand why that has not happened yet. But the fact that I paired the sunflowers with the yarn and my own making and hobbies is actually a religious thing also for me because while I was in seminary, I kind of fell in love with process theology. And it took me a while to fall in love with it because it's a very theoretical thing. And I'm very, very bad at learning theoretical concepts. Because if something does not have a practical application, it just goes in one ear and out the other. So, but once I kind of figured out what it was, basically, there's a lot to it, but the part of process theology that this is kind of supposed to represent is that God didn't stop creating. Like when we say God created the world, that doesn't mean that God ever stopped. And we are acting as co-creators with God. We play a part in that creation process as well. That God works with us and through us in order to make the world a better place, which is why it's called process theology, because it's an ongoing process forever and ever. And us as humans, as beloved parts of God's creation, just as with the plants and the animals and everything that God has created, we all work together to create with God. So that's kind of that process theology. If you bring it up to a lot of more conservative theologians, they'll accuse you of being a heathen, even in some Methodist spaces. Depending on where you go, a lot of people consider process theologians of being heathens, but honestly, that's the thing that makes the most sense. We spent an entire week on quantum entanglement in that class, which just melted my brain a little bit until I actually understood what it all meant. So I'm guessing that's kind of close to what dependent origination is, because I only understand the term quantum in the sense that I have seen both of the Ant-Man films. And honestly, throughout that entire class, I tweeted this and my TA liked it during class. But the amount of times that they said quantum during the class, I felt like that scene in Ant-Man and the Wasp where they were where like the science people were talking through all of like about like the quantum molecular stuff, and Ant-Man was just sitting there like, uh-huh, uh-huh, like I totally understand what you're saying. That's about where I was um there. But my TA for that class, Dan, was super awesome. Love him. Honestly, the class in general was amazing. My professor, Dr. Catherine Keller, love her work. Um, she was a super great professor, very academic, but very like receptive to questions as well from students like me who are like, but how can I actually use this in a church? You know? But basically, if you need me to say like quantum entanglement, what it means, it's basically that we were all created to be dependent on one another, like in a molecular level, like down to our cells and the atoms that make us up. You know, we were all created to be in connection with one another and with all creation. Basically, which like that just makes sense because I don't think, you know, I don't think humans or any part of creation was meant to exist on their own. You know, people talk about like cats being solitary creatures, but it's just that they show their love differently than a dog or a human. And I think that is how it is with just about everything in the world. Is it's not that anything was ever meant to exist on its own. It's just that we all communicate differently and show our love in different ways. So we need to, you know, my mentor for seminary, um, basically she explained the concept to me of love your neighbor as yourself is not to do to someone else as what you would like to happen because we all have our own different preferences, but to get to know your neighbor as well as you know yourself, so that way you can help them in the way that would be best for them. And that's kind of very processy. Yeah. Okay, so it is similar to dependent origination. Cool. 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 And yes, Paul Rudd is a vampire. I love that man. Paul Rudd is what happens when you're just like a nice person, unproblematic, you know. Yeah. But yeah, loving your neighbor as yourself isn't necessarily about like doing the exact same things to everyone, but knowing someone and understanding people. So, but yeah, that's what my tattoo means. Yeah. Hey Zach, how are you? I haven't talked to you in a while. How's it going? I haven't se- I haven't seen you since. Let's see. It's been a while. How are you? um. Yeah. So that's process theology, and that's what I believe. My paper for my process theology class was about process theology and understanding disability and chronic pain, and how um, like process theology helps us to meet our accessibility needs versus trying to cure things. Because you know, like process. One thing we talked about a lot was that process theology doesn't mean like God enact this miracle on this person to heal them, but rather um, we pray that God can guide the hands of the doctors and help those in that person's support system to help them make the best decision for themselves and give them the best care possible, rather than saying, well, if you're not healed, then there must be something wrong with you on a spiritual level, you know, which I think is very prevalent in a lot of Christian circles, and we need to move away from. So, love doesn't look like miracles, but the miracle actually comes in the forms of an entire community pulling together to help people meet their health needs, their basic needs, their accessibility needs. So, yeah, rich people do age better because they have money to do things to like get plastic surgery. Like that definitely helps. Um, I did entitle my final paper from that class called From Chronic Illness to Chronic Chillness, a processology perspective on disability. So, which I know my professor appreciated. She liked my jokes a lot in class. She also let me knit during class, which was great. That'll be the name of Paul Rudd's memoir, Genetics in a Vault of Lemaire. That is one thing that I'm proud of throughout my academic career. I don't think I'm like the smartest person when it comes to academia, and I'm quite frankly very glad that I'm not in school anymore because I don't think I'm meant to be in school. Um, but I'm very proud of a lot of paper titles that I've had. That wasn't even my best one. I wrote a queer theology paper in my undergrad on like a queer reading of the story of Rahab, and I entitled it "He Tried to Make Them Go to Rahab, but She Said No, No, No." And that is my favorite thing I have ever come up with, and I don't think I'm ever going to top that in my life. Um, yeah. So, yeah. Basically, a lot of people in the Bible are a lot more queer than our heteronormative Western reading of them, and we need to get a lot more okay with that. Um, Not even in the sense that we need to like actively push for biblical characters to be in queer relationships, but just simply like not automatically assuming that everyone is cis and straight in the Bible, because we shouldn't assume that in general. that I, that I think is a whole nother rant for a whole nother day because I've been talking a lot about things um, today. Yeah, thank you. I like that paper got a good grade, but I feel like I just want people to know that I said that at one point in my life. You know, like I don't think I'm ever going to top that. Yeah. It's been an hour and a half. Do I? My throat's starting to hurt from talking a lot. So, I know it's my job to fill the awkward silence here as I am the one doing the streaming. So I think since it's been roughly about an hour and a half, I might do a whole nother stream another time when I have my research a little bit more in front of me about like queering the Bible a little bit more. I think that would be a fun one. Maybe I should just like do streams where I talk about religion a bit more because I don't like so I don't like planning out and editing videos like that, but I do like coming on and just like rambling all of my thoughts out into the ether, you know? Thank you, Karen. um so maybe that could be a fun way for me to get that out there because I know that like people do enjoy when I talk about this sort of thing and I enjoy talking about this sort of thing, but I don't like editing this sort of thing whatsoever. It takes me back to being in school and that's yeah. Um yeah. So, queering the Bible, what are some other topics that I could talk about? I would love to do a Where Are They Now series on like all of the contemporary Christian bands I listened to in high school, but so far I only have Barlow Girl and Flyleaf. Um, Bar- Barlow Girl is actually in a good place right now. Flyleaf is actually more disappointing, which is not how I, ex- you know, anticipated all of that going out. So maybe I can do something on like Where Are They Now for all of the Christian groups I used to listen to, so I still do sometimes. Yeah. Yes, I agree on not turning our passions into chores. That's why I'm very grateful for my position now, because I would still like to pursue a deeper form of ministry someday, but I'm also very glad that my position right now is more um, behind the scenes stuff at a church whose morals and ethics I support. You know, like I do a lot of social media web stuff, um, and like techie type stuff, which I love and I have a very good time with. But I'm also very grateful that I'm not the person writing sermons right now, because I think as much as I loved being in school, I'm I'm really it's going to be a while before I'm ready to like read things in depth or write in depth. Ivy, what is it? She just sniffed a pile of clean towels and just like meow. That was her one meow for the day. um yeah. So, yeah, I think maybe doing some live streams might actually be really good to talk about like different religious subjects that I do want to talk about, just don't have the bandwidth to edit. And Ivy is under the bed right now, which is great. It's like, how dare you have clean laundry, mom? So, yeah, thank you all for being here. This is really great. Like I said earlier in the stream, I have a hard time like actually understanding that like I have a community of people, you know? Like I theoretically understand it and I numerically understand it, but I think it's sometimes hard to like physically remember it, and doing these live streams with y'all helps me with that. Um, so I hope y'all also got something out of this too. So maybe we can try for like weekly, I don't want to say like weekly religious streams because I feel like that veers a little too close to churchy, but different topics and stuff that I want to talk about, but I don't want to edit. So, yeah, let me make a little schedule and write down some ideas and we'll see what we can do. Thank you so much for being here. I love you all so much. You are fantastic people. Um, have a wonderful winter holiday season if you were celebrating, and don't let capitalism get you down. Yeah, weekly, whatever I feel like talking about streams. Sounds good. Um, I think I might try and film another video before I like lose my energy for the night. That way y'all can have some non-live stream content this week too. So thank you all so much for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you liked it, but I think y'all already did. You're doing a fantastic job supporting me. It feels really, really nice. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, night, whatever time it is where you are. Love you. Bye.